The silence that followed the battle was almost painful. For days, the Valori had heard nothing but explosions, screams, and the terrible sound of fire falling from the sky. Now there was only quiet. The Krath were gone. The bombardment had stopped. The nightmare was over. Ambassador Telm emerged from his underground shelter and looked up at the sky. It was still gray with smoke from the burning cities, but through the haze, he could see something new. Human ships orbiting peacefully above his world. Ships that had come not to conquer, but to protect. His communication device buzzed. It was Admiral Beak. Ambassador Telm, the enemy fleet has been completely destroyed. Not a single Krath vessel escaped. Your world is now under the protection of the Human Alliance. Telm's legs felt weak. He sat down on a piece of broken stone that had once been part of his office building. Admiral, I do not know what to say. My people, we are not a fighting species. We could not have survived without your help. We owe you everything. You owe us nothing, Admiral Beak replied. You sent a call for help. Humans answer such calls. It is who we are. There was a pause. We are sending down humanitarian ships now. Food, medicine, construction equipment. We will help you rebuild. Why? Tel asked softly. You did not know us before today. We have nothing to offer you. Why did you come? The Admiral's voice was thoughtful. Because you asked. Because you were in danger. Because someone had to stop the Krath from killing innocent people. She paused again. And because long ago, humans were alone in a dangerous universe. We know what it feels like to face extinction with no one to help. We swore that when we had the power, we would never let another species face that alone. Telm felt tears running down his face. The legends called your kind Deathworlders. They said you were dangerous, violent, terrifying. We are all of those things, Admiral Beak admitted. But we are also protectors. We choose who we fight, Ambassador. Today, we chose to fight for your people. And we would make that choice again. The first human transport ships landed an hour later. Valori survivors emerged from their shelters to see strange beings walking among them. The humans were larger than them, heavier, built for a world that the Valori could not have survived. They moved with a confidence that was almost frightening, but they were also gentle. Human medics treated Valori wounded with careful hands. Human engineers began clearing debris and setting up emergency shelters. Human soldiers distributed food and water to the hungry and thirsty. Sergeant Yun Tai-Wu led a team of Marines through the ruins of the capital city. He had survived the destruction of the Endurance in an escape pod, and he had fought in 3 more battles since then. His armor was dented and scorched. His face was tired. But he had one more duty to perform. He found a clearing near the center of the city, a place where a beautiful park had once stood. Now it was just ash and rubble. But it was high ground, visible for kilometers in every direction. Yun planted 2 flags there. The first was the Valori banner, a silver bird on a blue background. The second was the flag of the Human Alliance, blue with white stars. 2 flags, standing together. Captain Park Gina came to find Telm later that day. She was still injured, still wearing bandages, but she had refused to stay on the medical ship. She needed to see this. She needed to stand on the world that her crew had died defending. Ambassador, she said, approaching the bird-like alien, I wanted to meet you in person. Telm looked up at her. She was smaller than the other humans he had seen, but there was something in her eyes that made her seem larger. A fire that would not go out. You are the captain, he said. The one who came first. The one who warned them. I am Captain Park Gina. Yes. Telm stood and bowed deeply, a gesture of greatest respect in Valori culture. Your ship. Your crew. They gave their lives for us. I activated that beacon without knowing what would happen. I may have killed them. I am so sorry." Gina was quiet for a moment. Then she reached out and gently raised Telm back to standing. "Do not be sorry, Ambassador. My crew knew the risks. They chose to come. They chose to fight. And because of their sacrifice, your people survived long enough for the fleet to arrive." She almost smiled. Humans have a saying, "Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for friends." My crew died for strangers. That is even greater love. Talon did not fully understand, but he felt the meaning. These humans, these Deathworlders, they were not just warriors. They were something else. Something the galaxy had never seen before. Protectors, champions, guardians of the innocent Dot, and now they were friends. Far away, at the edge of craft space, a scout ship received a transmission. It had been sent automatically from the Valori system, a final message from Warlord Gren's flagship just before its destruction. The message contained sensor data, battle recordings, and a desperate warning. The Krath commander who received the message watched it in silence. He saw 342 warships destroyed by 200 human vessels. He saw tactics that the Krath could not match, weapons they could not stop, pilots they could not hit. He saw Warlord Gren, the most successful conqueror in Krath history, die screaming on his bridge Dot, and then he saw the final image. A recording from a damaged satellite still orbiting Valori. 2 flags standing side by side in the ruins of a city, and human soldiers looking up at the camera as if they knew they were being watched. One of them waved. The commander turned off the recording. His hands were shaking. The Krath Dominion had conquered 1,000 worlds. They had crushed every enemy they had ever faced. They had believed themselves invincible. Now they knew the truth. There were beings in this galaxy more dangerous than them. Beings who did not fight for territory or resources or power. Beings who fought because it was right. Because someone had asked for help. Because they chose to protect the weak instead of crushing them. The commander drafted a message to the Krath High Council. It contained one recommendation. Do not engage the humans. Do not threaten any world under their protection. Do not give them a reason to come for us, because if they come, we will not survive. On Valori, as the sun set over the ruined city, Ambassador Teln stood with Captain Park Gina and watched the colors spread across the sky. Orange and red and gold. Beautiful, despite the smoke that still hung in the air. What happens now? Tel asked. Now you rebuild, Gina replied. And we help. The Human Alliance has already voted to offer your species full partnership. You will have access to our technology, our markets, our protection. You will never face the Krath alone again. Partnership? Teln repeated. The word felt strange but wonderful. We have never had allies before. You do now. Gina looked at him. The galaxy is dangerous, Ambassador. There are beings out there who think strength is everything, who believe the powerful have the right to destroy the weak. Humans disagree. We believe that true strength means protecting those who cannot protect themselves. She turned back to watch the sunset. The Krath called us Deathworlders. They were right. We came from a world of death. But we also came from a world of love, of hope, of the stubborn refusal to let darkness win. She smiled, a real smile this time. They thought they were calling doom down upon themselves when they attacked you. They were right about that too. But for your people, Ambassador, we did not bring doom. What did you bring? Teln asked. Gina watched the last light of day fade into stars. Somewhere up there, her crew had died. Somewhere up there, human ships still orbited, standing guard. We brought dawn, she said. A new beginning. And the promise that as long as humans exist in this galaxy, no one who asks for help will ever stand alone. Teln looked at the human beside him. This small, fierce being from a death world. This warrior who had lost everything and still found the strength to comfort a stranger. "Thank you," he whispered. "For everything." Captain Park Gina simply nodded down above them. The stars came out, one by one, bright and eternal. And somewhere in the darkness, other species were learning a new truth about the galaxy. The Deathworlders had arrived, and they had chosen to be heroes. The battle had become a hunt. Admiral Beak had broken the Krath fleet into scattered pieces, and now her ships were chasing down every survivor. There would be no escape. There would be no mercy. The humans had come to end this, and they would not stop until every enemy ship was burning metal. Lieutenant Commander Yuna led a squadron of 12 fighters through an asteroid field at the edge of the system. Her sensors showed 8 Krath vessels hiding among the rocks, hoping the asteroids would protect them from human weapons. They were wrong. "All wings, spread formation," Yuna ordered. "Target their engines first. I want them dead in space before they know we are here." Her pilots responded instantly. They were young, most of them on their first real combat mission, but they flew like veterans. Human reflexes, evolved over millions of years of hunting and being hunted, made them natural pilots. They could react faster than most species could think. The first Krath ship exploded before it even saw the humans coming. The second tried to run, but Yuna's wingman destroyed its engines with a precise shot. The third fired back wildly, its weapons hitting nothing but asteroids. "Sloppy," Yuna muttered. "They are scared. Finish them." Her squadron swept through the asteroid field like wolves through a flock of sheep. Within 10 minutes, all 8 Krath ships were destroyed. Yuna did not celebrate. She simply reported back to the flagship and requested new targets. Across the system, similar hunts were happening everywhere. Human destroyers chased Krath cruisers into dead-end corners of space. Human fighters found hiding ships behind moons and in the shadows of gas giants. Human marines boarded damaged vessels and cleared them deck by deck. The Krath had never faced anything like this. Their species had evolved on a peaceful world with no natural predators. They had built their empire through numbers and cruelty, overwhelming weaker species with pure force. They did not know how to run. They did not know how to hide. And they did not know how to survive against beings that had been predators for their entire evolutionary history. On the flagship Hammer of Soul, Admiral Beak watched the tactical display with cold satisfaction. Her fleet had destroyed over 200 Krath ships. The enemy had been reduced to 47 vessels, scattered and desperate. Most of them were hiding in the rings of the gas giant Valori 4, using the ice and rock to mask their signatures. Commander No approached with a datapad. "Admiral, we have confirmed the location of Warlord Gren's flagship. It is in the center of the ring formation, surrounded by his remaining ships. Condition of his fleet? Damaged. Low on ammunition. They are trying to repair their jump drives, but we have been jamming their systems." Admiral Beak nodded. "Good. They want to run. We will not let them." A communication request came through. No, check the source. "Admiral, it is Captain Park Gina on the Swift Wind." "Put her through." Gina's face appeared on screen. She looked terrible. Bandages covered her burns, and her eyes were red from exhaustion. But her voice was steady. "Admiral, I request permission to lead the assault on the gas giant rings. Captain, you should be in medical bay." "With respect, Admiral, I was there when this started. I want to be there when it ends. My crew agrees." Beak studied the younger woman's face. She saw pain there, yes, but she also saw determination. The kind of determination that humans had carried with them since the first cave dweller picked up a rock and decided to fight back against the darkness. "Permission granted," Beak said. "But Captain, I want Gren's flagship." Make sure he does not escape. Gina smiled grimly. He will not, Admiral. I promise you that. The assault on the gas giant rings began 2 hours later. Admiral Beak sent 50 ships, led by the swift wind. They entered the rings carefully, knowing that the ice and rock would limit their sensor range and make combat dangerous. But humans have been hunting in difficult terrain for thousands of generations. Forests, mountains, oceans, caves. They had learned to track prey through any environment. And these pilots were the best humanity had produced. Captain Gina guided her ship through the spinning chaos of the rings. Ice fragments bounced off her shields. Rocks the size of buildings tumbled past. Somewhere ahead, 47 craft ships waited in ambush. Captain, her sensor officer reported, I am detecting energy signatures. Multiple contacts, bearing 047. That is the outer screen, Gina said. They want us to hit them first while the rest escape. She thought for a moment. Signal the squadron. We are going around. Hit them from behind. Her ships changed course, looping through the thickest part of the rings where the craft would never expect an attack. It was dangerous. They lost one destroyer to a collision with a massive ice chunk. But when they emerged, they were directly behind the enemy formation. The craft had been watching the wrong direction. All ships, fire at will, Gina commanded. The human squadron opened fire. 12 craft ships died in the first volley, caught completely by surprise. The rest tried to turn, tried to fight back, but they were in chaos. Their formation collapsed. Their captains screamed at each other over the communication channels. Meanwhile, more human ships arrived from other directions, cutting off escape routes and picking off isolated targets in the center of the chaos. Warlord Gren stood on his bridge and knew that he was defeated. His fleet was gone. His warriors were dead. Everything he had built, everything he had conquered, meant nothing against these Deathworlders. Warlord, his first officer begged, we must surrender. Perhaps they will accept prisoners. No, Gren said quietly. He had heard the human admiral's words. No enemy vessel leaves this system. He had seen how they fought, without hesitation, without mercy. These beings did not take prisoners. They finished what they started. Then we fight to the death, the first officer said. Yes, we fight. Gren straightened his armor. Helm, set intercept course for the human flagship. All weapons, maximum power. If we are going to die, we will take their leader with us. The craft flagship accelerated out of the rings, heading directly for the Hammer of Soul. It was a suicide charge. Desperate and hopeless thought, but Captain Park Gina was waiting. The swift wind intercepted Gren's flagship before it could reach Admiral Beak. Gina had been watching for this moment. She had known that the craft leader would try something dramatic at the end. That was how tyrants thought. All weapons, target that ship, Gina ordered. I want it dead. The swift wind opened fire with everything it had. Other human ships joined the attack, surrounding the craft flagship and hammering it with concentrated fire. Shields failed. Armor melted. Explosions tore through the hull. Warlord Gren felt his ship dying around him. Fire filled the bridge. His officers fell one by one. He tried to give one last order, but there was no one left to hear it. The craft flagship exploded in a ball of flame and debris. Captain Gina watched the explosion on her screen. She felt empty, not satisfied, not happy, just empty. Her crew from the Endurance was still dead. Nothing would bring them back. But at least she had finished what they started. All enemy vessels destroyed, her tactical officer reported. The battle is over. Gina nodded slowly. Contact the Admiral. Tell her the hunt is complete. In the rings of Valori 4, the last pieces of the craft fleet burned and faded. The ice and rock of the rings were now mixed with metal and ash, a graveyard for an entire invasion force. The humans had won, but for Captain Park Gina, standing alone on her bridge, victory felt like grief. She thought of the 47 souls who had followed her into this system, the brave men and women who had fought against impossible odds so that help could arrive. "I finished it," she whispered to their memory. "Rest now. It is done." Outside her window, the stars shone cold and eternal. But among those stars, word would soon spread. A single human ship had defied 300 enemies. A human fleet had destroyed them all. The galaxy would learn a new lesson. Today, do not threaten the innocent. Do not anger the Deathworlders. And never, ever forget what happens when humans come for their enemies. 48 hours passed like a slow nightmare for the Valori people. The Krath continued their bombardment, burning cities and killing millions. Ambassador Telm organized the survivors as best he could, moving them into underground shelters, caves, anywhere that might provide protection from the fire falling from the sky. He told no one about the human message. He was afraid to give them hope. What if the message was wrong? What if the fleet did not come? Better to let them expect death than to crush their spirits with false promise. But Tao himself could not stop watching the sky. Every hour, he checked his sensors. Every hour, he saw nothing but Krath warships, until the 49th hour. The first sign was a ripple in space itself. Then another. Then 100 more. The fabric of reality tore open in 200 places, and from those tears came ships. Human ships. Battleships, carriers, destroyers, cruisers. 200 vessels of war, each one larger and more powerful than the Endurance, had been dotted at the center of the formation, flew the flagship. The Hammer of Soul. It was massive. Nearly 3 kilometers long, covered in weapons and armor. On its bridge, Admiral Beak Soman stood with her hands clasped behind her back and studied the enemy fleet. She was a tall woman in her 50s, with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun and a face that had seen decades of combat. Her officers called her the Patient Storm because she never rushed, never panicked, and never showed mercy to those who harmed innocents. "Report," she said calmly. Commander Nohyok, her tactical officer, pulled up the data. 318 enemy warships remaining. They have destroyed approximately 60% of major population centers on the planet. Civilian casualties are estimated in the hundreds of millions. He paused. "We also have located several escape pods from the Endurance. There are survivors." Admiral Beak nodded slowly. "Send rescue ships for those pods immediately, and open a channel to the enemy fleet." The communication officer worked his console. "Channel open, Admiral." Beak did not introduce herself. She did not make threats. She simply spoke 3 words. "You were warned." Then she cut the channel and turned to Commander No. "All ships, attack formation. No enemy vessel leaves this system. Is that understood?" "Understood, Admiral." On the Krath flagship, Warlord Gren stared at the human fleet with growing terror. These ships were not like the Endurance. These were warships built for one purpose: absolute destruction. And there were 200 of them. "All ships, prepare for battle," he ordered, trying to keep his voice steady. "We still outnumber them. We can win this." But his officers did not look confident. They had seen what one small human ship had done. They had watched 13 of their vessels burn against a single enemy. Now there were 200 enemies, and these were not patrol vessels. These were killers. The human fleet moved forward in perfect formation. They did not charge wildly like the Krath expected. They advanced slowly, methodically, like predators approaching wounded prey. Admiral Beak had studied the enemy formations during the journey here. She knew their weaknesses, their patterns, their habits. She was not going to fight a battle. She was going to conduct an execution. "First wave, engage," she commanded. 50 human destroyers accelerated ahead of the main fleet. They were fast ships, smaller than the craft cruisers, but far more agile. They hit the enemy formation like a knife cutting through cloth. The craft tried to respond. They fired their weapons, launched their missiles, attempted to overwhelm the attackers with numbers. But human ships were built differently than anything they had faced before. They were armored for a species that had evolved on a world that constantly tried to kill them. They were fast because humans needed to chase down prey. They were deadly because humans had been killing things since before they climbed down from the trees. The first craft ship exploded within 30 seconds. Then another. Then 10 more. On the surface, Ambassador Town watched the sky light up with explosions. But these were not his cities burning. These were craft warships dying. He fell to his knees and wept again. But this time the tears were not from grief. The humans had come. They had actually come. Pyrrha stood beside him, her large eyes fixed on the battle above. "Ambassador," she whispered. "What are they?" "They are Deathworlders," Telm replied. And the craft just learned why the galaxy fears that name. The battle raged for 6 hours. Admiral Beak directed her fleet with cold precision, giving orders without emotion, watching enemy ships die without pleasure or regret. This was not personal for her. This was simply what had to be done. But for some of her crew, it was very personal indeed. Captain Park Gina had been rescued from her escape pod 3 hours into the battle. The medical staff wanted to keep her in the hospital bay, but she refused. She had burns on her arms, a concussion, and 3 broken ribs. She did not care. She demanded a ship. Admiral Beak gave her command of the destroyer's swift wind. "Welcome back, Captain," the Admiral said over the communication channel. "I understand you have unfinished business." Gina's voice was rough with pain and rage. "Those ships killed my crew. I want them." "Then take them." "Good hunting, Captain." The swift wind entered the battle like an angry wasp. Captain Gina drove her new ship into the heart of the craft formation, hunting the vessels that had destroyed the Endurance. She found them. One by one, she killed them. Her crew, many of them survivors from other damaged ships, fought with the same fury. They were not just soldiers anymore. They were vengeance made flesh. Warlord Gren watched his fleet die around him. He had started with over 300 ships. Now he had less than 100. The humans were everywhere, their weapons never stopping, their ships impossible to hit. Every tactic he tried failed. Every trap he set was avoided. Every counterattack was crushed. He finally understood why the ancient records warned about Deathworlders. These beings were not just dangerous. They were apex predators. They had evolved on a world that selected for only the strongest, fastest, and most ruthless. And now those instincts were being used against him. "Warlord," his first officer said desperately, "we must retreat. We must escape and warn the Dominion." Ren nodded slowly. "Set course for the system edge. Maximum speed. All surviving ships follow." The remaining craft vessels turned and ran. But they did not get far. Admiral Beak had anticipated this. She had positioned her fastest ships at the edge of the system, waiting. When the craft tried to flee, they flew directly into a wall of human destroyers. The Admiral's voice echoed across all frequencies. "No craft vessel leaves this system, none." Gren felt true despair for the first time in his life. He was trapped. His fleet was dying. And the humans showed no sign of stopping. On the surface, Ambassador Telm received a direct communication from the human flagship. Admiral Beak's face appeared on his screen. She was calm, professional, and completely terrifying. "Ambassador Telm," she said, "I am Admiral Beak Soman of the 7th Human Expeditionary Fleet. Your distress call was received. We apologize for the delay. Talon could barely speak. You came, he managed. You actually came. Of course we did. You asked for help. The Admiral paused. The enemy fleet will be destroyed within hours. After that, we will provide humanitarian assistance and help you rebuild. But first, I need to know, do you want any prisoners? Talon thought of his burning cities, his dead people, the millions of Valori murdered by Krath weapons. No, he said quietly. No prisoners. Admiral Beak nodded. Understood. She ended the communication and turned to Commander No. You heard the ambassador. No survivors. Finish this. The human fleet closed in on the remaining craft ships. What followed was not a battle anymore. It was an ending. Warlord Grin stood on his bridge and watched death approach. He had conquered dozens of worlds. He had killed billions of beings. He had never lost a battle. Now he was going to die, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. The humans had come for him, and humans, he finally understood, never stopped until the job was done. Warlord Gren sat on his command throne and laughed. The sound was harsh and cruel, like metal scraping against stone. Around him, his officers joined in the laughter. One small ship, one tiny vessel had just threatened the might of the Krath Dominion. What is a human? Gren asked his intelligence officer. I have never heard this word. The officer checked his database. There is very little information, Warlord. They come from a planet called Earth. It is a high-gravity world with extreme weather and dangerous wildlife. The species is relatively new to space travel. They have never been involved in any major conflict. Ren dismissed this with a wave of his armored hand. Primitives. Fools. They probably found that ancient beacon by accident and thought they could play hero. He turned to his weapons officer. Destroy them. Make it quick. I want to finish burning this planet before dinner. The weapons officer smiled and gave the order. 20 Krath warships broke formation and moved toward the Endurance. On the bridge of the human ship, Lieutenant Kang Dohan reported calmly, 20 enemy vessels approaching. They will be in weapons range in 3 minutes. Captain Park Gina nodded. She had removed her uniform jacket and rolled up her sleeves. Her eyes were fixed on a tactical display. Sergeant Yun, are your Marines ready? Sergeant Yun Tai-Wu stood at the back of the bridge with his combat team. They wore heavy armor and carried weapons that could punch through starship hulls. Ready and eager, Captain. Just point us at something to kill. Gina almost smiled. You will get your chance. Commander, bring us to attack speed. Lieutenant Dohon, I want firing solutions on all 20 incoming ships. Her crew moved without hesitation. They were afraid, yes. But they were also human. And humans had been fighting against impossible odds since before they learned to use fire. The crash ships opened fire first. Bright beams of energy shot across the void, aimed at the tiny human vessel. But the Endurance was already moving. Gina had trained her crew hard, and they had practiced evasive maneuvers until they could perform them in their sleep. The ship rolled and twisted, slipping between the enemy fire like water through fingers. Return fire, Gina ordered. The Endurance's weapons were not as powerful as the Krath guns, but they were more accurate. Human targeting systems, designed for a species that had evolved as hunters, could track fast-moving objects with incredible precision. The first shot hit a Krath ship directly in its engine section. The vessel exploded in a ball of flame. On the Krath flagship, Warlord Gren stopped laughing. What happened? He demanded. One of our ships was destroyed, Warlord. The human vessel is very fast, very accurate. Gren leaned forward. It was luck. Nothing more. Send more ships. But it was not luck. Captain Park Gina guided her ship through the enemy formation like a dancer moving through a crowd. The Endurance spun and twisted, its weapons firing constantly. A second Krath ship died. Then a third. Then a fourth. The Krath captains began to panic. They had never faced an enemy like this. Their ships were designed to overwhelm opponents with superior numbers and firepower. They were not built for this kind of close, precise combat. They could not hit the human ship, but the human ship never seemed to miss. How are they doing this? One Krath captain screamed into his communicator before his bridge exploded around him. On the surface of the Valori homeworld, Ambassador Teln watched the battle through his damaged sensors. His hearts were beating faster than they ever had before. The single human ship was fighting. It was actually fighting against 20 enemies, and it was winning. "This is impossible," Pyrrha whispered beside him. "How can one ship do this?" Teln did not answer. He was too busy watching the impossible become real. The battle lasted 17 minutes. In that time, the Endurance destroyed 11 Krath warships and damaged 4 more. The remaining 5 fled back to the main fleet, their captains screaming warnings about the Deathworlder vessel. But the Endurance did not escape unharmed. Enemy fire had hit the ship multiple times. The hull was breached in 3 places. The engine room was on fire. Life support was failing on 2 decks. Captain Gina wiped blood from a cut on her forehead and checked the damage reports. "How bad?" she asked Commander. "Oh, bad," O replied honestly. "We can still fight, but not for long. 10 minutes, maybe 15. Gina nodded. She had known this was coming. One ship could not defeat 300. But one ship could make them remember. "Lieutenant Dohan, can you still send transmissions?" "Yes, Captain. Communication systems are still functional." "Good. Send a message to the Krath flagship. Tell them this. Fleet inbound." You should have listened. Dohan sent the message. On his command throne, Warlord Gren received the transmission. He stared at the words for a long moment. Then he looked at the tactical display showing his 11 destroyed ships, his 4 damaged ones, and the single human vessel that had caused all this destruction. "Fleet?" He muttered. "What fleet?" Fear, a feeling he had not experienced in many years, began to grow in his chest. He crushed it down. "All ships," he commanded, "destroy that vessel now. Every gun, every missile, everything we have. Kill it." 331 Krath warships turned their weapons toward the Endurance. Captain Park. Gina saw the enemy fleet prepare to fire. She had seconds left. Maybe less. She stood straight and looked at her crew. These brave men and women who had followed her into certain death. "It has been an honor," she said simply. "The honor was ours, Captain," Sergeant Yoon replied. The Marine was smiling. He was not afraid. None of them were afraid anymore. The Krath fleet opened fire. The Endurance fought back for as long as it could. It destroyed 2 more ships before the end. But there were too many enemies, too many guns. Fire and metal tore through the human vessel. The bridge exploded. The engines died. The ship began to fall toward the planet below. Trailing smoke and flame. Ambassador Teln watched the human ship burn. He watched it fall from orbit like a dying star. And he wept. He had summoned help from across the galaxy. He had called the Deathworlders. And they had come. One small ship with 47 brave souls had come to save a world they had never seen, for people they had never met. And now they were dead. "I killed them," Teln whispered. "I called them here, and I killed them." Pyrrha put her wing around him, but she had no words of comfort. What could she say? The humans had tried. They had fought with incredible skill and courage. But courage could not defeat 300 warships. It was over. But then Teln's communication device buzzed. A message was coming through. It was from the human ship, sent automatically just before it was destroyed. The message contained coordinates and a simple statement. Human 7th Fleet. Arrival. Time. 48 hours. Hold position. Taylane read the message 3 times. Then he looked up at the sky, at the craft ship still raining fire on his world, at the smoke and destruction everywhere. 40-8 hours. He had to keep his people alive for 48 more hours. And then the humans would return. Not one ship this time. A fleet. On the burning wreckage of the Endurance, escape pods shot out into space. Not everyone had died. Captain Park Gina, badly wounded but alive, floated in a pod with 3 other survivors. She watched her ship die through the tiny window. "We did our job," she whispered to herself. "We bought time." Her eyes closed, but she did not sleep. She was thinking about what was coming. The Krath had laughed at one human ship. They had mocked the warning. They had destroyed the Endurance with overwhelming force. They thought they had won. They had no idea that they had just started a war with the most dangerous species in the galaxy. They did not understand that humans never forgot. Humans never forgave. And humans always came back. Warlord Gren would learn these lessons soon. He would learn them in fire and blood, and he would learn them far too late to save himself. Ambassador Teln stood at the window of his office and watched his world burn. The sky above the Valori capital city glowed orange and red. Krath warships hung in orbit like dark clouds, and every few minutes another beam of fire would fall from the heavens. Another city would die. Another million Valori souls would turn to ash. His thin bird-like body trembled. The Valori were not built for war. They had hollow bones and delicate wings. Their world had light gravity and gentle weather. For 10,000 years, they had built a civilization of art, music, and peace. They had never needed weapons. They had never learned to fight. And now the Krath had come. Telm turned away from the window. His assistant, a young female named Pyrrha, looked at him with terror in her large eyes. "Ambassador," she whispered, "the council has fallen. The defense minister is dead. You are the highest-ranking official still alive." Telm closed his eyes. He was a diplomat. He had spent his life talking, negotiating, finding peaceful solutions. But there was no peaceful solution to the Krath. They did not want territory or resources. They wanted extinction. They wanted to erase the Valori from existence simply because they could. "How many ships do they have?" Teln asked. "Over 300 warships in orbit. More arriving every hour." 300. The Valori had 12 defense vessels. All 12 were already destroyed. Teln walked to his desk and opened a locked drawer. Inside was a device that had been passed down through generations of Valori leaders. It was ancient, older than their recorded history. The legends said it was a beacon, a way to call for help from beings that lived among the stars. But the legends also carried warnings. The beings who would answer this call were not like the Valori. They came from a world of violence and death, a world with crushing gravity, savage weather, and predators around every corner. The beings who survived such a world were dangerous beyond imagination. They were called Deathworlders. "Ambassador," Pyrrha said, "what is that?" "Our last hope," Teln replied, "or our final mistake." He activated the beacon. Far across the galaxy, the human patrol vessel Endurance moved through empty space. It was a small ship, built for speed and reconnaissance rather than battle. Its crew of 47 men and women had been on patrol for 3 months, and they were looking forward to returning home. Captain Park Gina sat in her command chair and reviewed the daily reports. She was a small woman with short black hair and calm eyes. She had served in the fleet for 15 years, and she had seen enough combat to know that peace was precious and rare. "Captain," said Lieutenant Kang Dong from the communication station. "I am receiving a strange signal." Gina looked up. "Strange how?" "It is not using any known communication protocol. The signal is very old, very powerful, and it is definitely artificial." Dohan's fingers moved across his console. "I am running it through translation software now." The bridge fell silent as the computer worked. After a long moment, words appeared on the main screen. "Help US. We are dying. Please help us." Jina stood from her chair. "Source? A system called Valori. It is about 6 days away at maximum speed." Doan paused. "Captain, there is more. The signal includes data packets, images, coordinates, information about an attacking force." He put the images on screen. Gina saw a beautiful world with silver cities and blue oceans. She saw bird-like beings with delicate wings. And she saw Krath warships filling the sky, raining fire down on everything below. "How many enemy ships?" Gina asked quietly. "Over 300 confirmed. Possibly more." Someone behind her cursed. Gina understood. The Endurance was fast, but it was not a battleship. Against 300 Krath warships, they would last approximately 4 minutes. "Lieutenant Dawn," Gina said, "send this information to Fleet Command immediately. Tell them we are investigating." "Captain," said her first officer, Commander Omen Seo, with respect, "what can we do? We are one ship. If we go there, we will die." Gina looked at the images on screen. She saw a city burning. She saw Valori running through the streets, their wings useless against warships. She saw children huddled in their parents' arms. "They asked for help," Gina said simply. "We are going." The Endurance changed course and jumped to faster than light speed. 6 days later, they arrived at the edge of Valori space. What they found was worse than the images had shown. The planet below was covered in smoke and fire. Dozens of cities were gone, replaced by black craters. And in orbit, filling the void like a wall of steel and death, were the Krath warships. Dohan had been wrong about the number. There were not 300 ships. There were 342. "All hands to battle stations," Gina said calmly. "Raise shields. Power weapons." The bridge crew moved with professional speed, but Gina could see the fear in their eyes. They knew the numbers. They knew what was coming. "Captain," said Sergeant Yoon Tai-woo, the Marine Squad leader, "what is the plan?" Gina smiled. It was not a happy smile. "The plan is to show them what humans are made of. Lieutenant Dohan, open a channel to the enemy fleet. All frequencies." Dohan nodded and activated the communications array. "Channel open, Captain." Gina stood straight and spoke clearly. "Attention, Krath Fleet. This is Captain Park Gina of the human vessel Endurance. You are attacking a world that has requested our protection. You will cease all hostile actions and withdraw from this system immediately. You have 1 hour to comply. This is your only warning." For a long moment, there was silence. Then a harsh, growling voice responded. "Human, we do not know this word. You are one small ship. We are 300. Leave now, and we might let you live." Gina's smile grew colder. "You do not know what a human is? You will learn." 1 hour. She cut the channel. On the surface of the burning world, Ambassador Teln watched through a damaged sensor array. He had received reports of a single ship arriving. One ship against hundreds. The Deathworlders had answered his call, and they had sent one ship. He felt his heart sink. He had doomed his people with false hope, but then he heard the human captain's words. The confidence in her voice. The absolute certainty that she would not run, would not hide, would not surrender. And for the first time since the Krath arrived, Town felt something other than fear. He felt wonder. In orbit, Captain Park Gina sat back in her chair and watched the enemy fleet. Her ship was small. Her crew was brave but mortal. And she knew, with perfect clarity, that she was probably going to die today. But she also knew something else. Help was coming. The message she had sent to Fleet Command would bring the full force of humanity to this place. All she had to do was buy time. All she had to do was show these Krath what happened when they threatened the innocent. The hour passed. The Krath did not withdraw. All hands, Gina announced. Prepare for combat. Today, we show the galaxy what humans are. Today, we fight. The Endurance accelerated toward 342 enemy ships. And the Krath, for all their power and numbers, had no idea what was coming for them.